Hi everybody, how are you all doing? Welcome to the next episode of Sydney Social Live, a one-of-its-kind, thought-provoking talk show where we put the spotlight on hidden realities of Sydney's social circles. Why do I say hidden realities? It's because these are issues a lot of people are struggling with, but unfortunately, no one really is talking about them. Except, of course, us here at Sydney Social Live. So what is the purpose of this show? The purpose is to spark important conversations, to foster positivity, and to cultivate a community that is accepting and non-judgmental. Now, as you all know, and you've come to be used to this, it's our 18th episode today. I always have a special guest with me on the show, and today I have a really special person. We've got Leesa Tongoulidis. Woo! Hi, Leesa. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Are you as excited as I am?
I think I am.
Yeah.
I think I am more excited than you are, Nim. Because
I've
you've
been
got 18 episodes. This is my first one.
That is true, that is true. But we're going to have a lot of fun.
We are.
That's a prerequisite of the show.
Yes.
So we've got to have fun.
Yes.
So Leesa, we've got people from different parts of the world logging in. We've got people in Australia and of course people in India. India is 5.5 hours behind us at the moment, so it's mid-morning. But we are really excited to be seeing you all again as we do every Sunday. So I'm going to begin by reading out a little bit about you so that the audience who doesn't know much about you might find out a little more. All right, so everybody, Leesa is a Chief Creativity Officer at Human Art Coaching and Consulting, specializing in career success and organizational design. Leesa brings a rare mix of over 30 years of corporate experience in multiple sectors and UX design skills. She leverages a range of tools, frameworks, and methodologies to create a unique and purposeful existence for her clients. Her vision is to influence the shape of work and our collective human experience of it, so that we all feel like we can bring out our full, multifaceted selves to our work and succeed. Wow, that is quite a journey for you, Leesa.
It is, Nim.
It is amazing.
I'm tired already.
Well, can you imagine, like when I was reading it, when you first sent it to me, I thought, wow, for someone who's achieved so much, you look incredibly calm and in control, not frazzled at all. Is multitasking something that's always come to you?
I hate to say it, but it is my secret superpower.
It is a secret superpower.
Yes. I know people say it's not a good thing, but I seem to do it.
I think it's a great thing. So Leesa, Sydney Social, typically we are talking about what's happening in Sydney in the social circles. I am a migrant to Australia. I came here 28 years ago. A lot of our audience, are of migrant background. And so I try to cover points that will be of interest to the audience of the show. Today I have some very interesting topics which we've been sort of, brainstorming about over the last couple of weeks. Now I have noticed that very often as a migrant, when you come to Australia, within the migrant community, there seems to be postcode prejudice, which for those of you who don't know is snobbery based on where you live. So sometimes you can get snubbed based on your postcode. You're someone who was, I believe, born and raised in Australia.
Yep.
Is that something that you've ever experienced, and can you shed some light on it for our audience?
Sure. So when I was growing up, I think like most kids, you sort of grow up in a bit of a bubble and you don't really think much outside of your suburbs. So I grew up in Cabramatta, which is out in the western suburbs, and it wasn't really until I started looking for work that I kind of came across this postcode bias or postcode prejudice. And in those days, when you put your resume in for a job, you had to put your name and your address and all those sorts of things. And it was really apparent to me that if I put Cabramatta on my resume, that somehow or other that was not a good thing. And the conversations that were happening around me, and lots of innuendo, people spoke about people from the western suburbs and how they wouldn't get a look in and things like that. So I did actually move away from the suburb, not for that reason, but I pretty quickly learned how to navigate that. So I just did not bring up the suburb that I lived in or my background for fear of being excluded. I think these days we're a lot more conscientious, we're a lot more thoughtful around things like that. But I still think there's a legacy from the past that still plays out today, and it might not be overt, but it could be covert. But what I would say is to be proud of your background.
Yes.
No matter where you came from, wherever you grew up, that's your community. You know, be proud about it.
Absolutely.
And you know, learn a lesson from me that, you know, instead of shying away from it, hold your head up high and say, look at what I've achieved, look at the skills I've learnt, look at the success I've carved out for myself, despite having, you know, challenging socioeconomic issues or problems growing up. And I think it's doubly so for anyone who's migrated into Australia. So
definitely.
I can totally relate to people feeling that way, but I would say try not to allow that to colour your thinking.
Yes, which is challenging, but definitely it is a worthy goal. Did you find, you mentioned that it would be mentioned in a resume, and sometimes that could hold people back when you mention where you are located. Would it also impact social friendships and social interactions? Do you think there would be snobbery in society as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of my dearest friends come from Liverpool and Blacktown and Penrith and all those sorts of suburbs that tend to have a bit of that stereotype around them. And you know, my ethos really all the way throughout my life is to sort of look at the human first, look at everything else second.
Yes.
And you know, there's good people living in suburbs that aren't particularly well off, and there's bad people working in living and working in very wealthy suburbs. So when you evaluate the person, don't just look at the postcode, don't look at just the cover of the book. Take a peek inside.
Love it.
It's going to be a very rich story, there's no doubt. Everyone's got a good story. And get interested in that, because if there's something that gels between the two of you when you meet, and then all of a sudden you find out where somebody lives, and you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't hang out with them, think again.
Yes.
Because life's, you know, such a rich tapestry, and I just think you've
it's
got to be
shallow
open
too
to it.
if you think, you know, because I find that if a friendship is determined by the postcode, you are discounting the person, what they stand for, their values, and like you rightly said, you could be living anywhere. It doesn't change you as a person at the core, and I think more and more people need to be aware of that. But it's heartening to realize that, you know, for someone who was raised here, you know, you've also faced similar issues. When do you reckon you sort of made peace with the whole idea of where you lived or where you grew up?
I think it was a gradual process. I mean, I ended up marrying a Greek man, and he grew up in Balmain, which in those days was not a great address either, but now everybody seems to want to live in Balmain and the prices are high. But stepping into his world, stepping into his heritage and understanding the Greek world was so different to the Aussie world. I think that's when I went, wow, everybody's welcome. And he had so many friends from other backgrounds as well. It was almost like I just didn't even see the difference. I was just like, I'll have a bit of that and a bit of that. And it was all good. Italians, Greeks, Lebanese, Asians, Indians. Everyone's welcome in our house.
So you mentioned you've married someone of Greek heritage, and I often think that Greek culture is very similar to Indian culture in terms of the love for music and food and dance.
Food especially.
Food especially. So growing up, did you come across very many Indians back in those days? Because I came in the mid-90s, but you know, what about life before then? Growing up in Cabramatta, any Indians around or not really?
Not so many. I mean, it was very white Anglo-Saxon when I was growing up, and then there was a wave of Vietnamese immigration and boat people and all of the things that came with that, and it was quite a culture shock for anyone living in the suburb, and so, you know, I wasn't immune to that. It was a big change. But I really observed and watched that change, and I was kind of in not so much in two camps, but I was just watching and listening to the stories that were coming out. There was, you know, many racist people, and I hate to say it, but I was sort of on the fence because as a young person I wasn't really sure which way I should go. But then I just thought to myself, I've got to own my views of the world. I don't have to follow other people. So I broke away from, you know, people who spoke ill of people from other backgrounds and heritages.
To form your own worldview.
Well, I just thought it was a waste of energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to get on have fun and
of
do cool things. I didn't want to spend my time comparing and questioning
who comes
things.
From where.
Yes.
I do want to tell our lovely audience something that Leesa just said. Leesa said something very important about, despite being surrounded by people who have opposing views, Leesa chose to cultivate her own. And very often, because of peer pressure, we cave in and give in to other people's views and try to make them our own. But kudos to you that you, because I often say, and we talked about this the other day, I always think of Leesa as a global citizen.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about, I know you've come across that word before.
I know. When Facebook first came out, for those of you old enough, it had, the country of origin or what have you. And I typed in global citizen, and my mum used to think I was very stubborn and a bit difficult and, a bit awkward around things like that. And she said, oh, you've just got to do what the rules say. And I said, no, the rules weren't made for me. I don't know. It's just something in my character. I just don't like that sense of you belong here or you belong there.
Yeah.
We all belong here. We've got one planet.
Yes.
So, I know there's reasons why we have borders and border control and all of those sorts of things. But from a human to human social perspective, we're all humans first, we're everything else second, which is all beautiful and makes, for a great, experience for anybody, really.
Absolutely.
And I don't want us to lose that cultural background.
Yes.
It's so important, because imagine if we were just all bland doing the same things.
What a boring world it would be.
There'd be no reason to travel, would there?
Fabulous. I just want to check that the audio is okay. If for whatever reason you can't hear us, this is your moment to tell us, because otherwise I can't fix it later. All right, Leesa, that was amazing. Thank you for shedding light on postcode prejudice, a very important topic. Like you said, it's more covert now than overt, but it is still a problem, and I'm glad we've touched upon that. Now, this brings me to a very interesting topic. It's about the Australian sense of humor. Now, I've been here for 28 years, and hand on heart, I got it from day one. Okay, I never struggled with the Aussie sense of humor. I just got it. But I do know that many migrants struggle with understanding this peculiar, very unique to Australia sense of humor. So do you have any tips or any insights on, just shed some light on what is this Aussie sense of humor that is world famous, and how one can tackle it, I suppose, or navigate it?
Well, I think, the origins of Australia, very colloquial, very white.
Yes.
And it sort of broke away from the UK many, many years ago. And there was this whole vernacular around slang and this propensity to shorten words and turn things into stories that didn't make any sense. And it was only if you were in the clique that you knew what people were talking about. It could be related to a show or a movie or the sport or what have you. And so anybody listening in, they just would not understand what was happening. And if you're in that clique, you don't even notice that someone who's sitting outside of it doesn't understand what's going on. And I'm guilty of this myself at times, because I grew up with it. And so to throw something out like, have your ducks all in a row, or
fair dinkum?
Yeah, fair dinkum, or...
First time I heard it, I had no clue. Even words like brolly, I mean, don't forget to get your brolly, and I thought, what is brolly?
Yes.
Until I realized it's umbrella, everybody.
Yes, all this shortening of words, like even something like in the corporate world where people talk about a presentation, they call it a prezzo and things like that. And it'd be like, what are you talking about? A prezzo? And I'd be like, yeah, well, we always call it a prezzo, don't we? And I think, all Australians or people who are used to that sort of language need to be mindful or more mindful that when there are people around them with other cultural backgrounds, to be mindful and to spell it out and explain it, because it's not just something that people click in and pick up straight away. And now there are lots of great processes and frameworks and various pieces of legislation that sort of help to point us in the right direction. But 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I think it must have been so frightening for anyone entering the workplace, because it would be like, another language
Absolutely.
altogether.
It is another language, by
Yeah.
the way. Like if
It
you
is.
really put a whole string of slang words together, that sounds like a foreign language to a lot of people.
Yes.
Like I wouldn't have thought, let's catch up this ARVO.
Yes.
ARVO, everybody. I would never have realized back in the old days that meant afternoon.
Yes.
Right? So it's the little things like that. What I find that as a migrant, a lot of people struggle with is, let's say you are sitting with a bunch of, let's say, local Australians who are using a lot of slang, for instance, that everyone else understands. A lot of migrants would hesitate to clarify. They wouldn't ask because they would think, should I say anything? Whereas I used to always say, hey, what's that? What's ARVO? And then they, I find that Australians love explaining. They have a good story.
They love it. Because you know what, it's a welcoming gesture when
Yes.
you ask a question around what does that mean.
Yes.
But you've got to feel comfortable enough and sort of step into that courage,
To be able to put it into words.
to be able to put it into words. And so that's the tricky bit. So anybody who wants to sort of break in and understand it has to be able to put their hand up and go, you know what, I'm going to ask the question.
Yes.
And you'll find that it is just the most welcoming thing, because most people don't think about the fact that another person doesn't understand what's being spoken. And when that happens, it's almost like an education right there on the spot. We need to really think about that. So everyone feels good and everyone feels welcome. And those people I know who have done that, and I've got many friends who do, it's all, everyone just sort of gets put into the melting pot and understands one another. But both parties really need to sort of move in and think about it.
Absolutely. So here I'd like to have another quick word with our audience. So my friends, if you're new to Australia, for example, you're at the workplace and you're chatting with people and they use some form of Aussie slang which you don't understand, like Leesa said, and that was refreshing to hear. It is actually seen as a welcoming gesture. People love explaining the origins of a slang word. So don't hesitate, don't feel awkward. This is really the rich cultural diversity that we as Australians are so proud of. So do ask your questions, demonstrate curiosity, and it's going to be great in the long run in terms of fitting in and just feeling comfortable.
And I would say too, like if you are sort of a bit hesitant or a bit worried, if you've got one Australian friend, have a coffee, have a tea with them and ask them some questions. Maybe even take a notebook and say, I heard this word, I'm not sure if I heard it properly. Is that a word? What does that mean? When you're in that sort of safe confine with someone you know and trust, then it just makes it so much easier to join the larger group or to be in a meeting and understand what's going on.
Absolutely. Love it. And I'm sure after watching this episode with you, Leesa, a lot of people are going to feel reassured and are going to definitely feel a surge in self-confidence because it just makes so much sense now. And knowing that it's okay to not have understood something which we're not raised listening to. If you've never heard Arvo or Brolly, what's wrong in asking? That's how I look at it. And honestly, I've learned so many words just as a result of demonstrating curiosity. Till this day, after all these years, am I still here? I mean, the other day we were chatting and you said something. I said, Leesa, I've never heard that word. What is it?
What was the word? It was riff.
That's it,
And we're going to have a riff together, which actually is like a fight. But a riff in this sense is more just a conversation where we're having a nice, friendly chat.
Love it. Fabulous, that is great. Now that brings me to my next question. Are there 3 to 5 or any number of things that you think we as migrants need to know about Australia or about Australians that will help migrants fit in better or assimilate better or just make their life a whole lot easier after they move to Australia?
Yeah, look, I mean, I can't speak of experience, obviously, but I can only speak of other people that I know who've had challenges fitting in. And it's not a nice thing to spend your whole life fitting in. You want to feel welcome first and foremost. So there's a little bit of a bridge to go over to feel welcome, and that is being curious. Hang out with people outside of your own culture, outside of your own community. Make the effort to go to Friday night drinks or a lunch or social activities that might just sort of give you a different perspective. All of those things are sort of an education on feeling more comfortable in a country or an environment that you're not,
born in.
Absolutely. So that's sort of first and foremost. But I think on the other side of things, it's making sure that conversations happen in the workplace and to bring your own heritage and your own culture and your own perspective, because I don't think Australia is tapping into nearly enough wisdom and capability, which is outside of the technical skills that people might bring to the workplace.
True.
So you might do great work, you might have a fantastic job, but I'm sort of thinking about the future with people going into more senior roles,
Yes.
Leadership positions. Imagine if we could sort of break some of the old stereotypes and bring some of those wonderful perspectives and views and opinions. I just think that we would move mountains in terms of, you know, the commercial outcomes, the social outcomes, and nobody's going to be getting hung up about, you know, where you came from.
Yeah.
It's just having this richness.
Yes.
And so if everyone's afraid, they're not going to bring that best self to the workplace. So, you know, however it works, and it's not an easy thing. You can't just sort of wake up one day and say, I'm just going to be myself. I mean, even people who live in Australia don't feel comfortable, or women might not feel comfortable, and a minority group.
Yes.
But the more you work on that, and the more that you're proud about who you are, where you come from, what you bring to the table, you have every right to sit at the table. You have every right to give your view and opinion. Lean into that opportunity.
Yeah.
The good thing is that in this day and age, the welcome sign is up.
Yes.
It might not have been a couple of decades ago, and I'm not saying that it doesn't, you know, from time to time fall over.
Yeah.
But in this day, you should and can expect
Yes.
to be more welcomed into the workplace
Yeah.
and share your views and opinions.
So become curious is also another important thing. Would you say, like, a lot of people are scared to sort of, I know, you know, as migrants, many people during their lunch breaks tend to either sort of stick to people from their own ethnicity, because they're thinking, when I go and sit with let's say locals or people who are not from my heritage, I don't know how to make small talk, or they're often talking about things, maybe movie shows, or, you know, an NRL grand final that a lot of people from my part of the world may not be familiar with. We didn't grow up watching NRL. And a lot of the time they think, I don't understand, so I'm a bit scared to make small talk. Any suggestions on that? What can people do?
Yeah, I think just look for the common ground. I mean, I'm not particularly sporty myself, so I find it very difficult when people are talking sport, but I look for the angle that I can then step into that conversation. It might be talking about what I did on the weekend with my kids, or if I'm doing something in the garden at home, or something in my community. I'm trying to find common ground all the time, so I sort of keep my ear out for that. And, you know, those small acts of courage, which is what we talked about, is just saying, you know, when you were talking about such and such, I did that as well. Or it's not easy, but it is about putting some effort in. And sometimes I think when you're having your lunch break, you think, I just want to relax, I want to switch off, and I just want to have a chit chat to people I know.
Yeah.
Once you've broken bread with the people on the other table, you know, you've got over the hurdle. It's not so difficult. And then when you bump into them in the corridor, you say, hi, how you going? You know, what did you get up to on the weekend?
Yes.
Or, oh, I noticed that new tie you're wearing, or, oh, you know, things like that.
Yes. You've got talking points.
Australians love social chit-chat. You can tell. So it doesn't have to be about work.
Yes.
Just pick up on those small nuances and be aware of what's happening around you, because sometimes that's a great segue to build those trusting relationships.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be all work.
I love what you said about small acts of courage. You know, it's not always about taking a giant leap of faith. Sometimes it's just about doing the little things consistently. And like you said earlier, maybe take a local Aussie colleague out for coffee and have a chat and ask those questions and cultivate those friendships, because there's so much we can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even sort of in a professional sense, you can reach out and ask for someone to be your mentor, or you might, you know, want to be trained up on something. See if you can find someone who's outside of your cultural background who can educate you, and at the same time you're getting a bit of a social education as well, and you're picking up on all those slang words as well.
Love it. That is so true. That brings me to our last topic for the day, which is about, you mentioned Friday night drinks earlier.
Yes.
I've heard over the years that in Australia it is not so much what you know, it is who you know. and how important it is to network. A lot of companies have Friday night drinks. I know a lot of people who choose not to go consistently because they see it as a waste of time. And they see it as not being something that's going to benefit them in any shape or form. But I do know for a fact that Friday night drinks is actually quite important. Networking is important. But I have been in Australia only for 28 years. You've born and raised. And what do you have to say about networking? Do you reckon it's important?
Absolutely. I tell you what, there was one pivotal moment in my own life where I just had to sort of get into my own small act of courage, and that was when I returned to the workforce after having children. And it was really difficult because we didn't have a lot of family support, and we had to sort of make arrangements for the kids, but I really made the effort to go at least once a month, or every couple of months to drinks, even if it was just a short period of time. And I made a commitment that I would reach out to one person I didn't know. If there was a spot on the table and it was next to somebody I didn't know, I would go and sit in it. Because I thought, if I just gravitate to the people I know, I'm just going to have a chit chat with them. And my goal was just to expand my network. I had really big career goals that I wanted to achieve. And I thought, if I just hang out with the people I know, I'm not going to be learning anything new. I'm not going to be meeting anybody new. So I had to dive deep into that curiosity and just go and do it. It's not easy, but I thought, if I can meet one person every networking session, the next time I go, I'll meet two, and then three. Now I'm a bit of a social butterfly now. Can't help myself. I love networking, but I don't really like the term networking. It sort of has a bit of a cringy feel to it. I just kind of go, I'm just meeting amazing people, and who knows what I'm going to learn. It was the same when you and I met a few months back, and look at us here.
There you go. So my friends, very important to network. If you have, like Leesa said, you've got huge career goals, but even if you really want to live an enriching life, it's really about the people you surround yourself with. And the more people you know, the more doors will open, and the more you learn, the wiser we become. So if you've been avoiding those Friday night drinks, also a lot of people are teetotalers, they don't drink, and that's why they feel awkward going to Friday night drinks, saying, well, I'm not going to have a wine or a beer, and I'm going to be a complete misfit. But hey, for the longest time, if I'm not in the mood for a glass of wine, I have an orange juice, and no one frowns upon it. Is that right?
And now the best thing is, because alcohol, the whole habitual thing around alcohol shifted quite a lot globally, and there's all these 0% drinks and lots of non-alcoholic drinks, and it's not about drinks. I think in the past it used to be about who could get the drunkest or whatever, and it conjures up all sorts of horrible thoughts and memories. But now it's really about building social connection and feeling good about yourself, getting out into a different environment. You meet the most amazing people just by putting yourself out there. I
agree. So Friday night drink could well be a coffee, and no one's going to frown upon it. So don't hold yourself back. Leesa, that deserves a high five. That was amazing. I loved all the answers you came up with, and I'm sure all our viewers have learned a lot about Australia and life in Australia. So that brings me to what is known as our rapid fire round.
Oh no. What are you doing to me, Nim?
You'll be fine. You're a natural at these. So these are just very quick questions, and you've got to try and come up with a quick answer. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you to choose between two things. So, Leesa, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Always?
No.
All right, you can expand on your answer.
I am a bit of a connoisseur with tea, but I think I've just been indoctrinated into the Australian landscape with my morning coffee. But lots of herbal teas I quite like. Okay.
And how do you have your coffee typically?
Almond latte. That's my favourite. Okay. Sounds very
fancy.
Very fancy.
All right. So, are you a night owl or a morning person?
I'd like to say I was a morning person, but I am a night owl.
You are a night owl?
Yes.
So the creative juices sort of flow more after sunset?
Yes. Wow. After 5 o'clock, watch me go.
Wow, I'm the complete opposite. The earlier I get up, the more productive I am, but there you go, horses for courses. Books or movies?
This is a bit of a cliffhanger. I can't really decide between the two.
Really?
Because sometimes books become movies and, I'll say books.
So now that you've talked about books that become movies, let's say there is a book that is a movie as well. What would you go with first? Would you read the book first or would you watch the movie first?
It's tough because when I read the book, the movie never
Lives
lives
up
up
to
to the expectation. I think it's better to read the book and then not watch the movie.
Or just watch the movie and then be wowed by the book
Yes.
afterwards, right?
I usually do both.
Yeah. True.
I have to accept that they can only squish so much.
Exactly.
Into a
I
certain
mean, in
amount of
2
time.
hours, there's also when you write, there's so much more, that you can pour out in terms of creativity
And characterization.
and character arcs and all of that. So very true. All right. Do you like flat shoes or stilettos?
Sneakers.
It's
All
all
the
about
way.
comfort, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm very tall, so I can't really.
Amazing.
I don't really walk very well in stilettos. So as
Fair.
much as I admire them,
Fair enough. Fair enough. And what's your idea of a fun Friday night?
just out with my husband having a lovely meal somewhere.
Oh, nice.
We don't get out that much, so when we do, Friday night, just the two of us.
Oh, that's
Romantic.
How nice. Talking about dining out, are you familiar with Indian cuisine at all?
I am.
Yeah, and do you enjoy it?
I do.
You do. And what's your equation with the spice? Like, can you take spicy or not? Do you usually go for mild when they ask you mild, medium, or spicy?
I'm building up the heat level. I'm probably at 2 chilies or 3
Ooh,
chilies.
that's saying a lot.
I can't do 5 chilies. I
can't do 2 chilies.
That's my growth journey.
That is awesome. So if you like Indian cuisine, what's your favorite go-to Indian dish?
I can't go past a massaman curry, but I love the aromatic spices in it
Okay.
more than the chili.
Yeah.
So that's a favourite. I do like other dishes.
But this
I
is
think-
your go-to.
Yes.
And have you attempted making Indian food at home?
I do, but not so well. I'd rather come to your house and eat yours, Nim.
People ask me whether I
I
make
can
butter
never
chicken.
carry it off.
No. And butter chicken is a dish I've never made at home. So I always would go to an Indian restaurant because, you've got to have it made right and it's not something. And
No, but that was my staple. That was my entree into
Oh,
Indian
yes.
food, butter chicken.
Yeah,
I thought I knew everything about Indian
There
food.
you go.
And I was sadly mistaken, obviously.
All right. And lastly, is there a favorite restaurant, an Indian restaurant in Sydney that, you've enjoyed going to or you'd recommend?
There's quite a few around Sydney, but the local one that I go to, which is technically not Indian, it's Nepalese, is
Right.
Mount Everest. at
Mount Everest,
Hunter's
okay.
Hill.
All right.
And they make beautiful vegan dishes.
Oh, yeah.
So my daughter's vegan,
Yeah.
and got to make sure we look after her.
Oh, lovely. Well, I haven't been there. Having said that, a couple of people just in the last fortnight have mentioned it. So that's quite a coincidence and definitely on my to-visit list. Mount Everest, everybody, if you're looking for a nice Nepalese/Indian restaurant. That's in Hunters Hill, did you say?
Yes.
Fabulous. Well, Lisa, that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you've had as much fun as I have.
I have.
And do you have any last words to say to our lovely audience who's watching you from not just Australia, but from originally my homeland, India? They're watching as well. Any last words?
My famous sign-off at the moment is go gently and shine brightly. So I'm going to share that with all of you, and I hope that you have an amazing week ahead.
Excellent. Thank you so much, lovely people, for spending a slice of your Sunday with me here on Sydney Social Live and Leesa, of course. And hope you have a lovely week ahead. I'll see you next week with yet another episode. Until then, have fun. Bye. See ya.